It was my 40th birthday, and I can't say I was expecting anything grand from Mary. We'd been together for 15 years, and over time, birthdays had become a formality, a day to get through with a quiet dinner, maybe a cake if we were feeling generous. She was never big on extravagant celebrations either. But still, as I sat down to open the gift she handed me, I was hoping for something at least a little thoughtful. The card she gave me felt small and light in my hands, so I opened it first. The note inside made me pause. It was a $10 gift card to a local diner. I'm not talking about a cozy little spot with charm. This place was the kind of place that offered low-priced, greasy comfort food to a crowd that didn't mind the lack of atmosphere. But it wasn't the diner that caught me off guard. It was the note. The words jumped out at me immediately. Enjoy your meal. It matches your level of ambition perfectly. I didn't know how to react. My initial thought was, this is a joke, right? But as I read it again, something felt off. There was a bite to it, a sharpness that stung. This wasn't playful. It wasn't funny. I forced out a laugh, trying to act like I wasn't bothered. I mean, we'd been together for years, right? We had our jokes, we understood each other's humor. But something about this felt different. I glanced up at her to gauge her reaction, but Mary just smiled brightly, too brightly, as if waiting for me to find it amusing. Thanks, I guess, I muttered, trying to brush it off. I wasn't sure why, but the more I tried to forget it, the more I couldn't. The rest of the evening went on without much fanfare. We had dinner and she asked about my day. But it was in the back of my mind the entire time. That note. And the way it made me feel. There was something not quite right about it. Was this really just a joke? A $10 diner gift card with a sarcastic jab about my ambition? Was I overthinking it? Maybe. But it didn't sit well. As we sat on the couch later that evening, I could feel the weight of it pressing on me. She was in and out of the room, getting ready for a shower, fluffing up the pillows, rearranging things. And it was during one of those moments when I was left alone for just a second that I made a decision I didn't think I would. I wasn't one to snoop. Never had been. We trusted each other, at least I thought we did. But tonight I had this nagging feeling in my gut. I stood up a bit impulsively and decided to move her bag off the chair. It had been left there sort of carelessly and I was just tidying up. That's when I found it. A folded note tucked into the side pocket of her purse. It wasn't much bigger than a receipt, but something about it made my stomach drop. It wasn't her handwriting. It wasn't even close to hers. Neat, precise, a little too feminine. Something made me reach for it without even thinking. I opened it and my hands went cold. I hope your husband never finds out about us. It felt like a punch to the chest. I read the words again just to make sure they weren't some twisted mistake. No, they were there clear as day. It was a message. A message that was meant for someone else. And it wasn't meant for me. I couldn't breathe for a second. My mind raced. Was this real? What did it mean? Who was this for? Who was she talking to? I felt sick to my stomach, but I immediately folded it back up, slipped it back into the pocket, and tried to act normal. I don't know what made me do it, but I didn't want to confront her right then and there. I needed to think. I needed to process. A few minutes later, she came out of the bathroom wrapped in her towel, her hair dripping wet. She didn't seem to notice the subtle shift in the air. But I felt it. That uneasy tension. She was talking about something irrelevant, how she'd gotten shampoo in her eyes, how the kids had been fine, how I should have joined her in the shower. I didn't listen. All I could think about was that note. The words were echoing in my mind. I stayed quiet, doing my best to act like nothing was wrong. I'm not sure if I was fooling her, but I knew I wasn't fooling myself. I wanted to ask her about it. I wanted to demand answers. But I kept it in. I didn't know if I was ready for the truth. Dinner came and she did her usual act. A cheerful smile. Too cheerful, in fact. She was trying hard to keep things light, but I could see through it. It was almost like she was overcompensating, as if she could sense that something had shifted between us, though she had no idea what it was. It wasn't about the gift card anymore. It wasn't about the joke. It was about everything else. That note had unearthed something in me that I hadn't even realized was buried. So, what do you think of the card? She asked, sitting across from me at the table. Her smile never reached her eyes. I know, a diner? Not exactly a fancy gift, but at least it's something. I didn't respond at first. My mind was still spinning, still replaying the words in that note. I should have said something, shouldn't I? But I couldn't bring myself to do it, not yet. It's fine, I said, my voice distant. She didn't seem to notice the change in me. She was too busy explaining that a colleague had given it to her, part of some office joke or whatever. Oh, you know how it is at work. They love playing little games. Nothing personal. The way she said it so quickly, without missing a beat, it felt rehearsed. Too rehearsed. As though she'd been ready for me to ask. And the note. I couldn't help but ask. I just had to know. The one that came with it? She paused for just a second. It was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. A slight hesitation. She quickly recovered, though, brushing it off with a laugh. It's just a joke, really? People love to tease me at work. I don't know why they do it, but it's nothing serious. I nodded, but I didn't believe her. How could I? I couldn't shake the image of that note. The neat handwriting. The implication of something secret. Something hidden. Dinner continued in a haze. I tried to focus on the conversation, but it was hard. Mary was talking about her day, some work event, something about the kids, but it all blurred together. I found myself picking at my food, barely able to keep my mind from drifting. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to dig into her story, but I didn't. I kept my questions to myself, still trying to make sense of it all. I didn't say anything else that night. I just sat with the discomfort, with the gnawing feeling that something had changed. Something big. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to face it. That night, after everything had settled down and we both retreated to our separate spaces, I lay in bed wide awake. The house was quiet, too quiet. And that note? It was still burning in my mind, its words like a shadow I couldn't shake. In the dark, I thought back over the past year and a half. Something had been off. Mary had changed. She'd been working longer hours, gone more often, wearing clothes I didn't recognize, perfume I didn't know. There had been the late nights, the work dinners, the random mentions of her boss, Ben. But I never thought it would come to this. To a note hidden in her purse. But now I was starting to see it. To see the signs I'd ignored. The truth that had been right in front of me. The pieces were falling into place. And I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew one thing for sure, things would never be the same. That night, I lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a whirlwind of questions, doubts, and realizations. The note was still fresh in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling. I kept replaying it in my head, those words, that neat handwriting, the hidden message. It all felt like a dagger, and yet I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want to confront Mary yet, not until I understood everything, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just the note that had changed things. The note was only the final straw. The truth had been staring me in the face for months, and I had ignored it. The warning signs had been there all along. I'd just been too blind to see them. I thought back to when it all started to change. It had been about a year and a half ago, right after Mary got that promotion at Gray Point Strategies. She was ecstatic about it at first. I remember how her eyes lit up when she came home with the news, how she couldn't stop talking about the new responsibilities, the bigger paycheck, the new opportunities. But at the time I was happy for her. I thought it was just a normal career shift, one of those milestones everyone goes through. She'd worked hard and she deserved it. But soon after the promotion, things started to feel different. It wasn't immediate, but over the course of a few months, I began to notice small changes in her routine. She was working later and later, sometimes coming home past midnight, especially on Thursdays and Fridays. At first, I didn't think much of it. I knew she had new projects, that she was part of a larger team now, and that this kind of thing was common in her line of work. But then came the business trips. They were usually last-minute things, some corporate training, some networking event, as she called it. I didn't like the idea of her traveling alone, but I trusted her. I always trusted her. As the months went on, Mary's schedule became increasingly erratic. More nights spent working late, more weekends where she was busy with work events that I couldn't come to. She stopped asking me to join her for dinner with friends, saying she had too much work to do. She started mentioning her boss, Ben, more and more, at first in passing, but then with clear admiration. I remember the first time she mentioned him in a way that raised my eyebrows. She said, "Ben gave me the best advice today about the project. He really knows his stuff." It seemed innocent at first, like a colleague giving advice. But as the weeks went on, Ben seemed to occupy more and more of her conversation. And then she started quoting him during dinner, acting as though his ideas were the gospel. It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. After all, they were colleagues. She spent a lot of time with him at work, of course, she'd talk about him. It wasn't anything unusual. Or so I told myself. But it didn't stop there. Mary's wardrobe started to change too. At first, it was subtle. A new dress here, a new pair of shoes there. But soon, the entire look shifted. Her suits, which had always been practical, began to look more tailored, more form-fitting. I wasn't an idiot. I could tell the difference between a work outfit and something designed to turn heads. At first, I was too caught up in work to think much of it. But then I started to notice the expensive lingerie that she'd leave in the laundry, lingerie that I knew she didn't wear for me. And the perfume. The perfume that lingered in the house, unfamiliar and sweet in a way that wasn't quite her. I should have asked about it. I should have brought it up. But I didn't. I just told myself it was nothing. But even then, the signs kept piling up. Her phone. I'll never forget the first time I saw her phone face down on the counter as though she were trying to hide it from me. She had always been an open book with me when it came to her phone, showing me pictures, letting me read messages, even letting me look at her calendar if I asked. But now her phone was constantly on silent. Always face down when she wasn't using it. And then one day, she put a password on it. A password. It wasn't that I was jealous, not exactly. It's not like I had any reason to suspect her of anything at that point. But I felt a creeping unease every time I noticed the little things she was doing, things that weren't like her. The distance between us started to feel more and more like a chasm. I felt like I was losing her, bit by bit, and I didn't know why. The moment that made everything click, though, was when I noticed a browser tab left open one morning. It was just a single tab, an innocent mistake, but the title caught my eye. Montgomery Trip March. My heart sank as I clicked it open, not sure what I was looking for, but needing to see what she was hiding. There it was, photos of her and Ben, laughing by a lake, dressed up in clothes I didn't recognize. A dress I didn't know she owned. It was clear as day. They were together. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. I tried to rationalize it. It was just a work trip. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overreacting. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and now it was all I could think about. The days that followed felt like a blur. I watched her more closely, trying to piece together everything that had been happening. The perfume, the late nights, the wardrobe changes, the sudden closeness with Ben. It was all there. It was staring me in the face, and I'd been too blinded by my own trust to see it. I was scared to admit it, but I had to face the truth. Mary was pulling away from me. She wasn't the woman I had married anymore. And I knew deep down that it was because of him. Ben. I'd seen the way she lit up when she talked about him, the way she spoke about his advice as though it held some kind of divine weight. I'd seen her phone, her refusal to let me near it, her new habits, the way she dressed, the way she smelled. It wasn't just a few bad decisions or harmless workplace relationships. It was something more. Something that had been brewing for months. A week passed and everything came to a head. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend that the increasing tension between us, the strange little moments, the things I'd turned a blind eye to, were just coincidences. No, they weren't coincidences, they were all pieces of the same puzzle, and I had finally put them together. The note, the perfume, the phone, the late nights, all of it. It wasn't just the gift card, it was everything. And I knew. Deep down, I knew. I had never suspected Mary of infidelity before. She was the woman I trusted implicitly. We had built a life together, a family. But something had changed. She had changed. And as much as I didn't want to believe it, I knew what I had to do. I had to confront her. But I wasn't going to do it blindly. I needed proof. I took the week to prepare, to gather information, to make sure I wasn't acting on gut feelings alone. I wasn't going to confront her with accusations that could be shrugged off as paranoia. I needed hard evidence, something undeniable. I knew she would be out late the Friday evening. She'd told me earlier in the week that she was helping a neighbor with the kids and would be gone for a few hours. The kids were spending the weekend at their grandmother's house. It was the perfect opportunity. The house would be quiet. I could search, I could think, I could hopefully get to the bottom of this. When I got home earlier than expected that Friday, the house was eerily silent. No sign of Mary. I thought back to that note, the words, the strange sense of coldness that had crept in between us. I looked around and everything seemed so normal. The same old house. Same old living room. Same old kitchen. I almost convinced myself that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But then I spotted it, a silver SUV parked around the corner of the block, slightly hidden behind the tree. It wasn't her car. It wasn't even a car I recognized. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I knew exactly where she'd gone. Climbing the stairs, I felt my heartbeat quicken. It was a feeling of dread, a sick anticipation that I couldn't shake. My hands shook slightly as I made my way toward our bedroom. I could hear muffled laughter and footsteps inside. My mind raced. What was going on? Who was there with her? I stopped just outside the door. I didn't want to burst in, didn't want to confront her with nothing but assumptions. Instead, I took a deep breath and called her phone from an unknown number. The ring-on, her ring-on, rang from inside the room. My blood ran cold. Silence. And then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of rushing footsteps, a door slamming shut, the balcony door. She was trying to escape, trying to hide whatever was happening inside that room. I pushed the door open slowly, taking in the scene. Mary was standing in front of the mirror, wiping off her makeup with a little too much urgency. She was alone. At first, I felt relief. But it was short-lived. On the bed, I saw something that sent the entire room spinning, an unfamiliar men's shirt. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even close. My stomach turned as I took in the sight. It felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. She turned around quickly, her eyes wide. "Oh, hey. You're home early," she said, attempting to sound casual. But there was a tremor in her voice. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just walked over to the bed, picked up the shirt, and folded it carefully in my hands. I didn't speak. I didn't even look at her. "You don't have to act like this," she said suddenly, her voice cracking slightly. "It's nothing. A friend dropped by to help with the presentation. That's all." Her words were hollow. I didn't believe her. She didn't believe herself. I stood there for a moment, holding the shirt, the silence between us so thick I could almost taste it. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked out without saying another word. My mind was reeling. It was too much. I needed to think, to process, to understand what I was really looking at. I stepped outside, and that's when I saw it. The silver SUV pulling away from the curb. A man was driving it. I didn't know him, but the sight of him behind the wheel confirmed everything I had suspected. There was no denying it. Mary was involved with someone else. And that someone else was very much in our life. I didn't go back inside right away. Instead, I stood in the driveway, the weight of what I had just seen and heard crashing over me like a wave. I tried to calm myself, to breathe, but it didn't help. I was no longer just suspicious, I had proof. The shirt, the man in the car, the look in her eyes when I walked in. I wasn't sure how long I stood there. It felt like an eternity. Finally, I went back inside. I didn't know what to do next, but I couldn't just confront her with this now. I needed more. I needed something that would force her to admit the truth. That's when I made my next move. Instead of confronting her right away, I started taking action. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to let her twist her way out of this. I was going to be calm, deliberate, and methodical. I remembered something I had been working on for a while, an intellectual property deal I had been negotiating for the past few months. It was a water purification system, something I had been working on for years, and I had been hoping to sell it for a decent sum one day. Now seemed like the right time. I made the decision that night. I sold the intellectual property rights to an anonymous investment firm, Hollowbridge Ventures. The money I received from the deal was substantial, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. I immediately started buying shares in Gray Point Strategies, the company where Mary worked. It was a small stake at first, but I planned to increase my investment over time. I knew that once I had enough, I could use it to dig deeper into the company to expose what was really going on. In addition to this, I hired a private investigator, someone who specialized in gathering concrete evidence. I didn't need to confront Mary with accusations anymore. I needed to be sure. I needed to have everything laid out in front of me so there would be no question of doubt in anyone's mind. I wanted the truth, all of it, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. And so, every evening after work, I came home, put on the act. Nothing had changed. Mary went about her day, still pretending everything was normal while I quietly prepared for what I knew was coming. I couldn't tell her. I couldn't let her see what I was doing. I couldn't let her get ahead of me. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. And when it did, everything would change. For weeks, I lived a double life. On the outside, everything appeared the same. I came home from work, we sat down for dinner, and I smiled when she smiled. I laughed when she laughed. We talked about the kids, about the little things that had happened during the day. Mary never suspected anything had changed. She never suspected that I had started to play a game of my own, a game that would end with the truth, her truth, coming to light. But inside, I was a different person. Every moment I spent at home with her, every dinner we shared, every conversation, I was counting the days until the final reveal. It was like playing a long game of chess, and I was getting closer to checkmate. I'd hired a private investigator named Rick, a no-nonsense guy with a calm demeanor who had been in the business long enough to know what I was looking for. When I first reached out to him, I told him I suspected my wife was having an affair, but I didn't want to confront her just yet. I needed proof. I didn't want to rely on gut feelings on things that could be misinterpreted. I needed the hard facts. Rick didn't ask questions. He just got to work. It didn't take long for him to find the same things I had seen, the late nights, the strange phone calls, the trips that Mary kept mentioning in passing, and most damning of all, Ben's name cropping up again and again. He found photos of them together in various locations, in restaurants, in parks, even walking down the street. There were no signs of overt affection in the pictures, but the proximity between them spoke volumes. Rick was good at what he did. He even managed to dig up more than I had expected. He found evidence that Ben had been staying at a hotel near Mary's office for several nights in the last few months. The man was a frequent flyer at the same upscale place where Mary had apparently met him after work. Everything fit into place. I wasn't imagining it. She was seeing him. They were involved and I had the proof. But I didn't confront her yet. I knew that the next move was crucial. I wasn't going to ruin it all by acting impulsively. I wasn't going to let my emotions cloud my judgment. Instead, I did what I had planned all along. I kept the facade going. I came home every day with a smile even though my insides were churning. I acted like everything was fine, like nothing had changed. I knew that if I confronted her too soon, she would spin some story. She would deny everything, accuse me of overreacting, of being paranoid. No, I wasn't going to make that mistake. I needed her to know there was no way out of this. I needed her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the full extent of what she had done. So I kept my calm. I went through the motions. I played my part. And in the meantime, I kept buying shares in Greypoint Strategies through Hollowbridge Ventures. The more shares I accumulated, the more leverage I had. I didn't plan on getting involved in the day-to-day of the company. I had no desire to do that, but I did want control. I wanted to be able to make an impact when the time came. And then everything changed one Thursday night. It wasn't like I had planned it. In fact, it wasn't even something I saw coming. Mary had told me earlier that day she was going to meet a friend for drinks after work. It wasn't unusual. We had our own separate social lives, and I respected that. She wasn't the type of person to be tied down by rigid schedules. She liked to be spontaneous, to enjoy herself. And for a while, I had told myself that was normal. But that night, something in the pit of my stomach told me it wasn't. It wasn't normal. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to check. I wasn't planning on following her. I wasn't even planning on going out. But the more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. I couldn't help myself. I needed to see for myself. So I grabbed my jacket and slipped out the door. I didn't want her to know. I didn't want her to think I was following her. I wasn't. I just wanted to confirm what I already knew, to see it with my own eyes. I drove to the area where she had told me she was going. I parked a block away from the bar she had mentioned and sat in the car, watching the entrance. My heart was racing. I had no idea what I was hoping to see, but I knew I couldn't just sit at home and wait anymore. I needed answers. 20 minutes later, I saw her. She was walking with Ben. They were laughing, talking, and I could see the way she leaned into him, the way they shared a private joke. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was everything I needed to see, and yet it hurt more than anything I had ever felt before. I could have turned away. I could have left then and there, but I didn't. I stayed. I watched them. They went inside the bar, and I followed at a distance. I wasn't being subtle. I knew they would see me if they turned around, but I didn't care. I wasn't there to sneak around. I wasn't there to spy. I was there to confront the truth, to face it once and for all. I stood in the doorway of the bar for a few moments, watching them talk, sitting close to each other. I saw the way Ben touched her arm. I saw the way she smiled at him in a way that was different from how she smiled at me. And when she laughed, it wasn't the nervous laugh she'd always given me. It was the kind of laugh that made her eyes sparkle, the kind of laugh you share with someone you're in love with. That was it. The last shred of doubt vanished. I didn't approach them. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't need to. I knew enough. I turned around and walked away, my feet moving automatically. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was solid. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. As I sat in my car, staring out at the city lights, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The storm inside me had settled. I knew exactly what I had to do now. The next step was already in motion. The wheels had been set in motion weeks ago when I started buying shares. But now it was time for the final act. The moment I had been waiting for was finally here. Mary would never see it coming. The moment I stepped out of that bar, the weight of the truth pressing down on me, I knew things were about to change. I had reached the breaking point. No more pretending. No more playing the fool. It was time to bring it all to the surface. I didn't go back home right away. Instead, I went to a quiet cafe in the city. It was a place I frequented when I needed time to think, time to be alone. I sat in a corner booth, staring out the window at the passing cars, my mind reeling. Everything I thought I knew about Mary, about us, had just been turned on its head. The image of her leaning into Ben, laughing like she used to laugh with me, was burned into my mind. I had a decision to make. I knew what I had to do. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. I couldn't let it slide. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had, everything I had worked for, without facing the consequences. The first step in my plan had been to ensure I had leverage. I knew Mary. I knew how she would react when confronted with the truth. She would lie, she would try to talk her way out of it. I couldn't allow her the chance to do that. I had to make sure the evidence was undeniable. And that's when I set the plan in motion. I made sure that I was in control of the situation, that I was the one calling the sh*ts. I had already put everything in place, so when the moment came I could strike fast and effectively. I sold off some of my shares in Greypoint Strategies to get a lump sum of money. Not enough to cause suspicion, but enough to make an impact. I knew that Mary's company was headed for a crisis, and I wanted to be in the right place to make my move. Through Hollowbridge Ventures, I had already become the largest shareholder. I wasn't just an investor, I was a key player. The night I decided to make my move, I was ready. I had been preparing for months, getting all the necessary evidence, photographs, emails, financial records. I had everything I needed to make sure Ben would be taken down, along with Mary. I wasn't doing this just to hurt her, I was doing it to expose the truth. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. But I also wanted her to know that I wasn't the man she could manipulate anymore. I knew Mary would come home later that night. I had planned for it. She would be tired, probably unaware that anything had changed, thinking that she had once again outwitted me. But I had been watching. I had been gathering everything I needed. That evening, when she walked through the door, I was ready. I didn't say a word at first. I just sat at the dining table watching her as she hung up her coat and made herself comfortable. She didn't seem to notice the change in me. She never did. "Hey," she said casually, still smiling. "How was your day?" "Fine," I replied, my voice flat. "How about you?" She shrugged, setting her purse on the counter. "Oh, just the usual. Busy day at work. Ben and I were working late on that big project." I didn't let her see the way my stomach twisted at the mention of his name. It took everything I had not to let the rage show on my face. But I was calm. I had to stay calm. She continued, oblivious. "I'm just glad it's over. We're making good progress. Ben's a genius, She smiled, her eyes lighting up as she spoke his name. The sound of it made me want to throw up. "Yeah," I replied, my voice steady, "I'm sure he is." I could see the subtle shift in her expression. She was starting to sense that something was different. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the tension in the air was palpable. I didn't give her the chance to ask what was wrong. I stood up, walking toward the table where I had laid out the evidence. The photos, the emails, the financial documents, everything. It was all there. The proof of her betrayal, the confirmation that she had been lying to me for months. I turned to her, my voice cold. "You've been busy, haven't you, Mary? Busy with Ben. Busy with something more than work." She froze, her eyes widening. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice faltering. "I'm talking about this." I gestured to the table, the photos of her and Ben, the emails that were exchanged under the guise of business, the financial discrepancies that linked them together. It was all there. Everything I had gathered in my quiet preparation. Mary's face paled. "How did you get this?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "Does it matter?" I replied. "What matters is what it shows. You've been having an affair with Ben. You've been lying to me for months. And now I know everything." For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the evidence. Then, slowly, she sank into a chair, her eyes brimming with tears. "Alex, please," she began, her voice breaking. "It's not what you think. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." I shook my head. "It's exactly what I think, Mary. You've been having an affair. And you've been hiding it from me. You've been lying to my face for months. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't see the signs? The late nights? The excuses? The way you look at him?" She tried to speak, but I held up my hand to stop her. "You don't get to explain this away. You don't get to play the victim here. This is your mess, Mary. And I'm done cleaning it up." Her tears flowed freely now, but it didn't change anything. She had made her choice. She had chosen him over me, over everything we had built together. "I want a divorce," I said flatly, my voice unwavering. "This marriage is over." Her face crumpled and she reached for me, but I took a step back. Don't touch me. Not anymore." She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're really going to do this?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. I just walked to the drawer where I kept the divorce papers and I pulled them out. I placed them on the table in front of her, watching as her hand trembled when she reached for them. "You have no idea how much I hate you right now," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But this isn't about revenge. It's about closure. And it's about making sure you understand the consequences of your actions." Mary looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. "Please, Alex. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. We can work through this. I'll end things with Ben. I'll fix it. Please, don't do this." I took a deep breath, my resolve solidifying. "It's too late for that. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. The days following our confrontation were a blur of legal papers, lawyer meetings, and the gradual unraveling of a life I had once known. Mary tried to reach out several times, desperate to make things right, but I couldn't find it in me to respond. The damage was done. What we had was gone. I couldn't look at her the same way again. A few days after she moved out, I found a letter from her in the kitchen. She had left it on the table, neatly folded. I opened it with hesitation. It wasn't the first letter she'd sent, but this one felt different. It was long, filled with apologies and an earnest plea for a second chance. "Alex," she began, "I've never been more ashamed of myself. I know I've hurt you and I can't undo the damage I've caused. I was confused, lost in something I didn't fully understand. But I want to make it right, to rebuild what we had. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for your forgiveness. For the sake of our family, for the sake of what we once had." Reading her words felt like a punch to my gut. How could she still ask for forgiveness after everything? After months of lies, after betraying me in the most hurtful way? I tossed the letter aside, not bothering to read the rest. I didn't need to hear more of her empty words. She tried reaching out again, this time calling, leaving voicemails with her voice breaking, telling me she loved me and regretted everything. But the truth was, it wasn't about love anymore. It was about consequences. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. As the days passed, I focused on the kids, on my work, on everything that kept me moving forward. The house felt empty without Mary, but it also felt like it was finally starting to breathe again. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I wasn't a victim of betrayal anymore. I was healing. In court, things moved quickly. Mary fought for assets, trying to claim that I had used family funds to buy my shares in Gray Point Strategies. But I had kept everything separate, just as I'd planned. My lawyer proved that the money used came from my intellectual property deal, not anything that was shared in our marriage. Mary's countersuit about emotional humiliation was dismissed just as quickly. I got full custody of the kids, and though the legal battle wasn't easy, it was nothing compared to the emotional one. It wasn't the money or the house that mattered. It was the kids' stability. I couldn't let them see the wreckage of our marriage. They deserved better. And so, I moved forward. I didn't know where life would take me next, but I knew I wasn't going to let Mary or Ben dictate it. The world kept turning, and I had no choice but to keep up. 8 months had passed since the divorce was finalized, and life had settled into a new rhythm. The kids were happy. They were thriving. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living. The pain of what Mary had done was still there, buried beneath the layers of my life, but it didn't control me anymore. I had built something new. I had completed the environmental station I'd been working on for years, and the county had even awarded me for it. It wasn't just a professional milestone, it was a personal one. I had achieved something despite everything that had happened, and I was proud of that. I had set my sights on the future, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Mary would occasionally show up at school events or pick up the kids, but she always kept her distance. She had started to fade into the background of our lives as if she were no longer a central figure in our family. I didn't mind. I didn't need her anymore. The conversations we had were polite but empty. Whenever the kids asked about her, I didn't lie, but I didn't offer unnecessary details. I didn't want to create animosity. They were too young to understand everything that had happened, and I wasn't about to make them choose sides. One evening, a few months after the divorce, Mary came by to pick up the kids. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, and she wore a look of quiet resignation on her face. We didn't speak much, just exchanged pleasantries. She had become a shadow of the person I once knew, an image of regret that seemed to weigh her down. Before she left, she quietly said, "I regret so many things, Alex. I never wanted to hurt you. I wish things could have been different." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She had already made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I had no need for closure, no need for revenge. I had my kids, my work, my peace. That was enough. I sat down at my desk later that night, staring at the letter Mary had sent me so many months ago. I had kept it not because I needed to read it, but because it was a reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. The pain was still there, but it was no longer my driving force. I wasn't the man I had been before all of this. I had become someone stronger, someone who knew that the most important thing in life was to move forward, no matter what. As I closed the drawer, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The kids were happy. I was happy. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free.